Okay, I want to welcome everyone to this edition of Game of Thrones, the church edition, the Sunday School edition. There we go. Um, Today is January 10th, 2021, and we're going to continue on from last week. Ezekiel's vision of the new temple that is yet to be built, but the Spirit has taken him to see the dimensions. And so last week we talked about all the dimensions of each little detail. It was just like looking at a blueprint of a house to be built. Mm-hmm. And today, last week we mentioned, well, the reason he's being shown this is so there's a record of how to build it later on. Well, we actually get those words today. We'll get those later as almost to the end of today's lesson. So where it says write these down so they'll know what to do. So anyway, let us go ahead and get started. We are in Ezekiel chapter 42, starting in 42 today. And we're going to do 42 and 43 and then a quick 3.5-minute video. On screen, Paul. Where's my PowerPoint? My PowerPoint is gone. Well, let me go back out and do this again. Yeah, my PowerPoint disappeared. Okay, we will do it again. So bear with us as we have a little technical difficulty here.
It's supernatural, is that it?
Yes, yeah, this supernatural cyber stuff.
Technology is great now.
Right.
Yeah, until it isn't,
Yeah.
which is about 4 seconds after it was.
Right.
And that scares me with all of the stuff that we do because we have the internet and the cloud and all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
Scares
So,
me too.
Here we go. Okay. I must have exited a while ago.
I'm kind of the old school in that part.
Okay, so again, today we are in Ezekiel chapters 42 and 43. Okay, if someone wants to read 1 through 3 in chapter 42.
I'll try it, okay? Then the man led me northward into the outer court and brought me to the rooms opposite the temple courtyard and opposite the other, wall on the other side, on the north side.
Okay, what man was that? That was the man who looked like bronze.
Like who?
Like bronze.
Yeah, the bronze
So
man.
probably an angel. Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
The building, whose door faced northwest, 100 cubits long and 50 cubits wide. Both in the section, 20 cubits, can't see this too well, cubits from the inner court, and in the section opposite the pavement on the outer court, gallery faced gallery at the
Third level.
3 levels.
Yeah.
What's gallery say? I don't get that.
The one gallery faced the other.
Oh, I
Right,
see.
it's-
Okay, so it basically, okay.
3 floors.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Okay, 4 through 6.
And before the chamber was an inner walk 10 cubits wide, away of the 100 cubits, and their openings were on the north. Now the upper chambers were smaller because the galleries took more space away from them than the lower and middle ones in the building. For they were in 3 stories and had no pillars like the pillars of the courts. Therefore, the upper chambers were set back from the ground upward more than the lower and middle ones. You mean like this?
Yeah,
Is that what
yeah.
it means?
Right, the opposite way of what they were on the other thing. So
Yeah, the other thing was,
correct.
and I
So they-
never could figure out how that balanced.
right. So when it says the upper rooms were narrower,
Mhm.
they get a little bit smaller because
Yeah.
there's less space for them to fit in
Uh-huh.
because the gallery kind of remains the same size kind of thing. Or the gallery gets a little bit smaller as you go up.
Mhm.
In the video we'll watch here at the end, it calls them dining rooms again, but they're meeting rooms
Mm.
for the priest at this point because we're in the inner court.
Uh-huh.
So something that I'm missing and all this kind of stuff, I never hear anything about stairs.
Yeah, last week there was a brief mention of
Yeah,
it.
there
And
was.
in the video, the way it described it, it was a spiral. It was a spiral staircase, which I won't say would have been unheard of, but it would have been a architectural feat to do.
That's for true. Yeah.
That's remember we talked about how it kind of did this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It kind of got wider as it
As
went
it went
out,
up. Uh-huh.
or as it went up.
Yeah.
That spiral staircase would have been able to meet the requirements of that design.
But would they have been able to figure that out back then?
Sure,
Okay.
they built a stinking set of pyramids in Egypt
And it had steps on it.
2,000, 2,500 years before.
Yeah,
so-
that's true. That's true.
Sure. Okay.
7.
Yeah, 7 through 9.
I got.
Okay.
There was an outer wall parallel to the rooms and the outer court. It extended to the front of the rooms for 50 cubits, while the rows of rooms on the side next to the outer court was 50 cubits long. The row on the sides nearest the sanctuary were 100 cubits long. The lower rooms had an entrance to the east side as one enters them from the court, outer court.
Okay.
It's beginning to not make much sense to me.
Yeah, I kind of lost me here.
Yeah.
That's why I put the videos
Yeah.
in these at the end. So,
Yeah.
but I think
Oh,
I always
pictures.
think it's important to read the word. Yeah, we may get confused with it, but that's that ingenuity we were talking about. People are able to see beyond. They're able to see between the lines and actually put this stuff together. That's what's so amazing about the Ark encounter in Kentucky. Is they took it verbatim and line by line, and Ken Hom, his group, built that, and it is just huge. When you park in the parking lot, you have to get on a bus that you can't drive up to the area. You're just in a general parking lot, kind of like Disneyland.
Yeah.
And so you get on this bus, and as the bus kind of winds through these hills there in Kentucky, you round this bend, and there it is right in front of you. And it just is, there's no way to describe it. It is just huge.
Now, could that thing have floated?
Yes.
Well, that was the
It
expectation.
supposedly did.
Now,
but-
that one in Kentucky won't. It's
No,
not waterproof.
No, but I mean, something that big.
It's not made to float.
Something that big, though.
Sure. And in fact, about halfway through the, I call it an exhibit, but halfway through the tour or whatever, because it'll take 4, 5, 6 hours to do. Luckily they've got
Oh my God.
they've got chairs and things
Yeah.
to sit on, and so I'm serious. It is huge. About halfway through, they've got a demonstration of a little computer generated experience where they go through the biblical flood,
Mhm.
the Christian biblical flood,
Uh-huh.
or Judeo-Christian flood, along with 4 other flood narratives of different cultures.
Uh-huh.
And this computer model builds the boats, if you will, based on those. And it comes up with its own, saying that with the one that God told them to build was
Uh-huh.
the only one that could have withstood these floods. And of course, it's a little, you got to go in there with an open mind.
Yeah.
Although the more evangelical leaning you are, the easier it is to believe all this stuff, because it just increases your faith
Mhm.
as you walk. My parents will go in there and they'll probably look, when can we move in, kind of thing, is what my parents would probably say. So, but anyway, so right, when you think of these things, it's hard. By the way, I took it upon myself after the men left yesterday. I used my arm yesterday and I measured this table using a long cubit. Now remember, the long cubit was from the point of the elbow to the fingertip.
Yeah.
Okay. This is 4.5 long cubits long. If that gives you an idea, when it says 50 cubits, that would be more than 10 times longer than this table.
Yeah.
Did you measure it with a measuring tape?
No, with my, I measured
No,
it with
I mean to
my.
see how long it is compared to what you
No,
got with a cube.
no, but this is probably a 6-foot table,
Okay.
7-foot table.
So with a long
Really?
cubit, it
That long?
might have been shorter.
It's not, it's bigger than 6 feet.
Okay, we'll say 7. I don't think it's as long as 8, but we'll say 7 feet.
Okay, so. it
So
was
more than 10
short.
times that, it would be, say, 75 feet long, 50 cubits.
So then cubits are maybe a little shorter
Well, regular cubits would be,
than
but
feet.
correct. Yeah. Well, that would be, yeah, about 1.5 feet.
Ronnie, you're a
A
quilter.
little over a foot, a foot and 3/4.
I
somewhere
said,
around.
you're a quilter,
What about?
measurement.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't want you to measure it, Fran.
So did we
I
read
don't
10?
No, we have not.
Okay.
No,
So someone want to read
Okay.
10 through 12.
On the south side, along the length of the wall of the outer court, adjoining the temple courtyard, and the opposite the outer wall, were rooms with a passageway in front of them. These were like the rooms on the north. They had the same length and width, with the same similar exits and dimensions, similar to the doorway on the north, with the doorways of the rooms on the south. There was a doorway at the beginning of the passageway that was parallel to the corresponding wall extending eastward, by which one entered the rooms.
Okay.
I'm totally lost.
Yeah.
I can't picture
I'm-
this.
Well,
now.
fortunately, 42 is not very long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
13 and 14.
okay, I'll take it. Then he said to me, the north and south rooms facing the temple courtyard are the priest rooms, where the priest who approach the Lord will eat the most holy offerings. There they will put the most holy offerings, the grain offerings, the sin offerings, and the guilt offerings, for the place is holy. Once the priests enter the holy precincts, they are not to go into the outer court until they leave behind the garments in which they minister, for these are holy. They are to put on other clothes before they go near the places that are for the people.
Okay. So at the end of verse 12, between the end of verse 12 and the beginning of 13, we shift from a concept of aesthetics, and we shift to a concept of function.
Mm.
So we're not looking at anatomy anymore. We're looking at physiology. We're looking at the function of the temple, and specifically the priests in this
Yeah.
regard. This is very interesting. Some of these things still hold true for some Orthodox. Orthodox Christians follow this pretty closely. The priests have particular garments that they wear when they are in the quote unquote most holy place,
Mhm.
but they do not leave that most holy place without going into a rectory or something and changing their clothes before they meet and go out to greet the people. In Protestant churches, if we're robed up, no, we'll just keep the robe on and go on out, and greet people. So they take these things very specifically. Of course, in Jewish culture, these they're being reminded of some of the Levitical laws that were in place concerning their garments, because the garments that they use in the most holy place are considered holy.
Mhm.
Therefore, they can't be taken into an impure area. So,
Most places that doesn't say anything about the priest having lunch from the holy offerings.
well, that is part of that. If you read Leviticus, things start, they're a little graphic, but it's also a little sleepy. A lot of repetition. Numbers is even worse. But you have to remember that the Levites were given no land. They were given basically nothing. The tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, were required to give the Levites, to sustain the Levites, to sustain the temple. And so those offerings that were given, a portion of that, basically, let's use the tithe just to, yes.
Y'all are the only ones here.
Okay.
I didn't have any children,
Well,
so.
Karen's here. So. You can go. Well, that wasn't in response to your statement just then. I was just saying Karen's here too. Don't have any children here. Karen's here.
She's not a child, she's a grown-up woman.
She's a grown-up woman.
Okay.
Just letting you know.
Thank you.
Okay.
The so we'll use tithing just because that's in our Western Protestant mindset. That's easier for us to think of. So the people tithe to the church, but what does the church do with the money that comes in?
Well, hopefully they give it to the needy.
They
and
use a portion of what comes in
for
to go
themselves.
out to something else.
Mhm.
And so that's the church's tithe. Well, in Jewish culture, in the temple setting, the people would be required to bring their offerings, their sacrifices to the temple.
Mhm.
The priests would then use part of it to sacrifice to the Lord, atonement, blood atonement. We've heard that word before,
Mhm.
that phrase. They for atoning for sins, for quote unquote appeasing the God,
Mhm.
because remember they still lived in this mindset of ancient Near East, where where I won't say the Jews did, but the culture around them, the mindset was that there were different entities that were in charge of others, and so that's where some of these symbolic ritual sacrifices did. But part of that was also for the sustenance of the priests. And so part of that sacrifice, especially the meaty part, was for the priests. The fat was burned off.
Uh-huh.
So the priests were usually probably pretty lean. I would say they because they did not gorge themselves. However, there is a phrase in Deuteronomy that talks about the priests sharing at certain times of the year where the meal would be shared with those who were less fortunate, the orphans, the widows, there's the aliens in the land. And so that's probably where some of that stuff was used for. So in that context.
But it's just not put into
42.
a furnace and just incinerated. Some of it's being consumed.
So, right. Some of it was burnt off, the fat specifically, and the blood. But the meat itself was used to feed the priests. Mm-hmm.
Well, the Levites did not have anything. They had no land. They had no nothing. Where did they live? They didn't all live in the temple?
No, they were provided areas.
Oh, okay.
Based on the tribes themselves. So what it is when Joshua fought the battle of Jericho and the Israelites start moving in, they start distributing all the land up in the promised land. Each of the tribes were responsible to give areas for the Levites to live.
Okay.
And so there were cities set apart where the Levites would live, kind of thing. But of course that doesn't exist now.
Yeah.
So
Today we call them monasteries.
monasteries would be some of that.
Yeah,
There's
but
3 or 4
monasteries
different-
though can grow their own grain and grow their own food.
Correct.
Then they couldn't then.
This would, if we were to put this in a 21st century Protestant context, it would be a full-time minister who basically lived in a house right outside the church, or that the church provided a house for them, a parsonage or a manse or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The preacher would be dependent on the church to bring their meals.
Mhm.
The preacher would be responsible for all the money that came in. The preacher would be responsible for a lot of stuff. If we were to put that, basically they would live at the church unless they were sleeping, then they would sleep at their home.
Mhm.
That was provided.
Huh.
So they would be responsible for a lot, but the people, the congregation, would be responsible for upkeep on the house and things like that. So it's hard. It's hard to visualize it in a 21st century.
is.
But that's the easiest way to do this, is to use our current context. Say Joe,
Yeah.
we would provide a house, we would provide food, we would provide clothing, we would provide all that for him. But he would he'd never have any free time.
Mhm. Mhm.
There would be no sabbaticals, there would be no vacations, and that's why Catholics you mentioned monastery. That's why Catholic ministers, ordained Catholic ministers, would not get married, is because they're married to the church.
Mhm. Yeah.
So full-time in charge.
Pretty much. Now you know why there's so many. Their
Yeah.
downtime
Yeah.
was they would work in shifts
Oh,
because
okay,
someone had to
okay.
be on duty at all times.
They had to sleep sometime.
Hmm. May
Yeah.
I ask a question? In 13, now I know what a grain offering is,
Mhm.
but the sin and guilt offerings, are
Yeah,
those
what is that?
offerings people brought because of their sins and guilts? Or
Yes.
It's in
The
Genesis or Deuteronomy. that it's-
Leviticus. Well, you see them a lot in Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. You'll see most of these, but Leviticus is specifically about the priestly things. Right, there were a lot of different offerings. Some of them were for guilt.
But what did they consist of, the offerings?
Well, some would be a fatted calf. I think we talked about
Okay.
some of that. Some would be a calf. Some would be a dove. Some would, or a
Okay.
couple of
Whatever
doves.
they could afford.
Right,
Yeah.
a lamb.
Mhm.
You're right. At some of the bigger offerings would be bulls.
Okay.
Well,
you-
I'm like Wendy. I hope they had a bin for the sin offering and a bin for the guilt offering, so I'd know which ones they were.
They were done at different times of day and
Okay,
different times of the week.
okay.
Cooked, you mean?
They
Okay.
don't say a whole lot about the
Cooked
Jubilee, do
times
they?
of the day,
No,
or brought
Don't know.
brought at different times.
You've got to remember, right, for the number of people that are living in there, you take the Woodlands community, 125,000, 135,000 people.
Uh-huh.
If that was Israel, each family was responsible for bringing that. And so that might take days to
Mhm.
do
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
these.
Hmm.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
okay. So we'll go on now. Uh-oh. What is that first four words?
When he had finished.
When he had finished. Okay. I know you are happy to do that. Yeah. So 15 and 16.
Now when he had finished measuring the inner house, he brought me out by the way of the gate, which faced toward the east, and measured it all around. And he measured on the east side with the measuring reed 500 reeds by the measuring reed.
By the measuring reed.
Yeah.
Yeah, reed would be rod. It's the same thing. The measuring
Yeah,
stick.
but measured on the east side of the measuring rod, 500 rods measuring by the measuring rod. That
Yeah.
doesn't make a whole lot of
Well,
sense.
it's just saying it's 500 rod lengths
Okay.
in each direction, square.
Okay.
But don't you love it when they say when he had finished and then it says, then he measured?
Yeah. What's he been doing for the last 2
Well,
weeks?
remember, he's already gone through, he looked at the outer court, then he came back through the east part and then back in, kind of doing the inner part now.
Mhm.
Now he's coming out the east gate and measuring the whole outside.
Didn't he already do that? The outside?
The outside of the inner core, the
Oh.
outside, yeah. So, okay.
Okay.
So
I'm rotted up to there.
I don't think we'll know when he's finished. do you?
there's three parts. There's
He
three
won't know and we
parts.
won't
He's
know.
doing it this way.
There's
I hope
there's
it
three
is.
parts to the
You'll have
temple, and there's really a
photographic
fourth
mind.
part if you count everything outside.
Throw a monkey wrench in the stew.
Um,
Woo.
So yeah, right. When Herod comes along, that's the fourth part, which everyone is able to, the court of everyone, basically. Then you've got the outer court, which is just for Jews. Only Jews could go in there. Then you got the inner court, which are only those who have purpose for being there. Those would be maybe the elders, definitely priests. And then you've got, definitely priests would be in there. Maybe a few of the higher religious leaders. Then of course, the Holy of Holies would be only one. The high priest was only allowed in there. And y'all may have heard stories about this over time, but it even mentions it in Leviticus about the high priest. When the high priest went into the Holy of Holies once a year, it only happened once a year. And when he went in, he had to tie a rope around him because if he didn't come out in a certain amount of time, somebody had to be able to pull him out because nobody else was allowed in there.
Hmm.
So they would have to pull him out.
Interesting. I don't remember that, this synagogue we went to, do you?
Hope Ezekiel had a tape recorder.
So did we read this?
No.
No,
No.
18
No.
through 20. Pretty short.
he made it to the south side. It was 500 cubits by the measuring rod. Then he turned to the west side and measured. It was 500 cubits by the measuring rod. So he measured the area on all four sides. It had a wall around it, 500 cubic long and 500 cubic wide, to separate the holy from the common.
To separate the holy from the common.
Mine says separate the holy from the profane.
Oh, well,
Woo,
the holy from the unholy.
yeah.
Yeah, that's better.
Now we go to Ezekiel 43.
I hope they're finished measuring.
We're pretty much done measuring because remember I mentioned at the beginning, God shows up. Now remember, we're in the vision. Okay, we're in Ezekiel's vision. So someone wants to read 1 through 5.
Then the man brought me to the gate facing east, and I saw the glory of the Lord of Israel coming from the east. His voice was like the roar of rushing waters, and the land was radiant in its glory. The vision I saw was like the vision I had seen when he came to destroy the city, like the visions I had seen by the Kebar River where I fell face down. The glory of the Lord entered the temple through the gate facing east. The Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner court, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple.
Okay. Did y'all catch anything here? When the glory of the Lord shows up, what does Ezekiel say it was like?
Oh,
What he had seen in the past.
he'd seen it
The
before.
2 visions he had had in the past.
Yeah.
The most recent one was when he was taken in the Spirit. He saw those weird things destroy the city.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The first one was in Ezekiel 1 when he saw those weird things, the wheels within a wheel,
Mhm.
with the faces, a face on each side. This looks exactly like those other 2 visions. This is what he's seeing again. And so we, of course, he called them seraphim. He called them angels, seraphim, messengers of fire. Okay? In the video, you're going to see, whoever did the video took liberties. So you're going to see like a double wheel there with 4 facets on it.
So my footnote says God's glory returns to the new temple.
Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about.
Mhm. And the glory of the Lord filled the temple. That's
All
right at
right.
the end of 5.
All
Okay,
right,
so we'll go on 6 through 7.
I got it. While the man was standing beside me, I heard someone speaking to me from inside the temple. He said, "Son of man, this is the place of my throne and the place for the soles of my feet. This is where I will live among the Israelites forever. The house of Israel will never again defile my holy name, neither they nor their kings by their prostitution and the lifeless idols of their kings at the high places."
Different translations.
Never
there, but
again betray, or what did it say?
one
Defile
says defile.
my holy name.
The
Is
people of
that true?
Israel will never do that.
Oh, okay.
And as far as
Okay.
we know, that held true. The only the people to defile it was Antiochus IV Epiphanes.
Okay,
So
But
according
it
to
wasn't
this should still be standing today.
Well, right. Think about what that would have meant to the Jews in AD 70 when Titus comes and destroys the temple.
right.
Mhm.
That means God don't have a place to live. Where is God
Right.
now?
Uh-huh.
That is why it is so important for the Jews to rebuild the temple.
Right.
Of course, when the temple is rebuilt,
God will be back.
well, it's going to usher in. It's going to usher in the last days.
Revelation.
Mhm.
Okay? So, watch for that. Those are those signs that we look for.
Mhm.
Mm.
When Saddam Hussein was in power, he believed that he was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar. You know
Right,
that?
right.
Guy was nuttered.
In fact, so much
Uh,
that there were Iraqi coinage that on one side had his face
Right,
and on the other side had Nebuchadnezzar's face.
right.
making him equivalent to Nebuchadnezzar.
Shoot.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people go nutty. We've
Nebuchadnezzar didn't shoot anybody at the conference table.
had a lot of people go
What I want to
nutty.
point
Didn't
out,
hide in a rabbit hole either, I bet you.
what I want to point out is while the man is standing beside me, okay, now he's calling this a man.
Right,
We already know, we called this man a bronze an angel earlier, but remember
Right.
I said last week that there's other thoughts as to what this is.
right.
While the man is standing beside me, I heard someone speaking from inside the temple. Now, who's inside the temple at this point?
God.
The glory of God.
Right.
So if God is there, the argument is made from those other standpoints that this is Jesus showing him. This is another possible instance of Jesus present prior to incarnation.
Hmm.
So that's what some of the arguments are.
Mhm.
So yeah, the people of Israel never defile my name. But you notice it doesn't say anything about the ark.
So we're not talking about the angel anymore.
Well,
being
this,
beside him.
right. It keeps talking about the man in bronze or the man.
Uh-huh.
We're under the assumption this is an angel just based on the other visions that he has had and all that. But some theologians make the argument that based on this
Okay.
section, this could be actually a pre-incarnation Jesus.
So just in this section or in the whole?
In others, but this
Okay.
is the main crux of where they get their argument from.
Okay.
That's what I said. Jesus is throughout the Old Testament. He's there.
Well, we believe that, sure.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay. So 8 and 9.
I'll take it. When they joined their threshold next to my threshold and their doorpost beside my doorpost with only a wall between me and them, they defile my holy name by their despicable practices. So I destroyed them in my anger. Now let them put away from me their prostitution and the lifeless idols of their kings, and I will live among them forever.
Okay. Now, this brings some interesting aspects here. When they put their threshold next to my threshold, when they put their doorpost next to my doorpost, what does that say?
They're infringing on God?
No.
No?
When God came to them last time, when God lived among them last time, they defiled the holy name. I'm doing it again. The only thing separating us is this wall between the holy and the unholy. This is a God of second chances. But it's interesting that he would use the terms threshold and doorpost because Jesus, when he tells, in my Father's house are many rooms. So we're going to live in God's house. And this kind of to me, this makes me think of that. In my Father's house are many rooms. So,
Right.
okay.
These
10.
people, though, are not being invited in.
Sure. Well, no, they're not going to go into the Holy of Holies.
No.
That's strictly for God
Yeah.
for now because they're unholy.
Uh-huh.
Eventually, God will make us holy and we'll be able to live with
Okay.
God. Okay, 10 and 11.
As for you, son of man, describe the temple to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the plan. And if they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the design of the house, its structure, its exits, its entrances, all its designs, all its statutes, and all its laws, and write it in their sight, so that they may observe its whole design and all its statutes and do them.
Okay. So this is what I was talking about before, at the beginning of our thing. So we finally get to the point where, well, why did Ezekiel have this vision? He had the vision in order to be able to write it down. But there's one stipulation here, and I want to, right at the beginning of verse 11, the NIV and several other translations say, and if they are ashamed of all they have done. Well, if is a kind of a weird word. There are other translations that say when. And when they are ashamed of all they have done. So their discipline, their exile is going to exist for as long as they do not acknowledge their shame. So when they acknowledge that, then they can get the
So
plans.
if it may not happen,
Correct.
it's just a matter of time.
Correct.
Yeah, there you go.
So, so that they may be faithful to its design and follow all its regulations. So, verse 12.
This is the law of the temple. All the surrounding areas on top of the mountain will be the most holy. Sure is the law of the temple.
That is the law of the temple. So the temple is being built on Mount Zion.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay. 13. Yeah, some more cubits. Sorry.
All right.
Now we're talking about the altar now. Okay. Remember I was talking about function. Well, we're kind of going back to aesthetics a little bit, but function fits in here if you listen to it. So 13 and 14.
These are the measurements of the altar in long cubits. That cubit being a cubit and a handbreadth. Its gutter in a cubit deep and a cubit wide with a rim of one span around the edge. And this is the height of the altar. From the gutter of the ground up to the lower ledge there goes around the altar. It is 2 cubits high and the cubit is a ledge. It is a cubit wide. From this lower ledge to the upper ledge, it goes around the altar. It's 4 cubits high and the ledge is about a cubit wide.
So the altar is doesn't say here. We think we get to that here in a minute. From the gutter to the ground, yeah, it goes up. So when we measure this, we're talking about this altar being a little bit longer than this table, or
Mhm.
around the size of this table, but it's a whole lot wider. Okay, it's a little wider. On each side, each corner, there's going to be horns. We'll read that in a moment, but it's going to be raised several times, decreasing in width as it goes up. So, okay, 15 through 17.
I got it. The altar hearth is 4 cubits high and 4 horns project upward from the hearth. The altar hearth is square, 12 cubits long and 12 cubits wide. The upper ledge also is square, 14 cubits long and 14 cubits wide, with a rim of a half cubit and a gutter of a cubit all around. The steps to the altar face east.
Okay. So I was a little wrong here when I said it was about the size of this table. It's about the size of this table high. Okay, so if we were to stand this table up on the end, that's how high from the ground to the top it would be. But the platform, the top of the altar itself is 12 cubits square.
Mhm.
That's big. That's 3 times this size.
Yeah,
this
yeah,
table. The steps of the altar face east. Okay. 18 and 19.
Okay. Then he said to me, Son of man, this is what the sovereign Lord says. These will be the regulations for sacrificing burnt offerings and splashing blood against the altar when it is built. You are to give a young bull as a sin offering to the Levitical priest of the family of Zadok, who come near to minister before me, who come near to minister before me, declares the sovereign Lord.
20 through 21.
Steve.
And you shall take some of its blood and put it on its 4 horns and on the 4 corners of the ledge and on the border around them. Thus you shall cleanse it and make atonement for it. You shall also take the bull for the sin offering, and it shall be burned in the appointed place of the house outside the sanctuary.
So what they're having to do is they have to purify themselves. The priests have to be purified again. So that's part of this ritual. The other is they've got to dedicate or purify the altar. They've got to make it acceptable to do sacrifices to God. And so that's what this bull is for, is to do that. Okay, 22 and through 24.
On the second day, you are to offer a male goat without defects for a sin offering, and the altar is to be purified as it was purified for the bull. When you're finished purifying it, you are to offer a young bull and a ram from the flock, both without defect. You are to offer them before the Lord, and the priests are to sprinkle salt on them and sacrifice them as a burnt offering to the Lord.
Okay. So after the bull was done to purify the priest, now they're having to do a male goat to purify the altar. And then they got to offer a bull and a ram in order to now do the sacrifice, the sin offering. Okay. Now that the others have been purified, now they can go on with this somebody sent me probably a birthday message.
Hers, dear.
Yeah. So now they've got to atone for their sins. So that's where we're at now. Now, why it says sprinkle salt on them, I ain't figured that out. I looked it up, but I couldn't figure it out. Because really, you'd only use salt if you were trying to cure something,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know
Maybe
why
it
that
tastes
was.
better.
Well, at this point, they're not eating it. You know,
They're just burning it.
right. So that was on the second day. So the first day, the priests got purified. That probably took them all day because there's a lot of priests. The second day, they're purifying the altar and then providing the purified priests are providing the sin offering on the purified altar.
Well,
Now-
I did learn something. A goat can purify a bull.
Yes.
I needed to know that.
So 25 through 27.
Purify sin.
For 7 days, you are to provide a male goat daily for a sin offering. You also provide a young bull and a ram from the flock, both without defect. For 7 days, they are to make atonement for the altar and cleanse it. This they will dedicate it. At the end of these days, from the 8th day on, the priests are to present their burnt offerings and fellowship offerings on the altar. Then I will accept you, declares the sovereign Lord.
Oh, wow.
So day one was the purification. Day two and the next 6 days. So, from day 2 through day 8, that's 7 days. They're going to be doing all the rest of this stuff.
What did they do with those carcasses?
They burned them.
I know, but
Can you
Burned 'em
imagine
up?
this?
I mean,
Yes.
completely burned 'em up.
Burned them till
Ashes.
nothing was left.
they
That's
didn't,
why the gutters are there, so they can wash away the ash.
yeah, they didn't eat them. That's
And so from the at the end of these days, from the 8th day on, so it seems like daily to me.
mhm.
Yeah,
But they never talk about how much wood it takes to burn these animals.
yeah, really.
Okay, so we've reached the
No
end of
natural
reading.
gas, huh?
Huh?
No
So the
natural
priests
gas.
No natural gas.
didn't eat for 8 days if they were burning.
That's what I'm
everything
wondering.
up?
Yeah.
No, they would have, but we don't hear that here. Okay, start this video and turn these lights on.
I think the animals had to be terribly fecund in order to keep up with this.
Uh-huh.
Music is annoying again. Sorry. Excuse me. Next week we'll probably get into that river that's there.
Is it coming in or going out?
Coming in.
Couldn't use that to wash.
Oh, well,
everything away,
both.
could they?
Both.
Yeah,
It's flowing through.
right.
Was under the building or through it? Must be under.
It's kind of at ground level. But I'm guessing it would have been a little higher inside that way. Gravity would have taken it away from them. That's the wall. That's the Court of Commons. So everything inside here is considered holy.
Right.
Okay, here's the glory of God showing up.
Those wheels, yeah.
From the east, just like the sun.
With eyes on every side. That's
Right.
what those white things are.
Right.
And it comes to rest inside.
is that called?
That's the altar.
That's where they did their burning.
That's all right.
From here to here is 4 cubits. So it's 4 times the side of, if we were to stand this table up, it would be 4 tables tall. You can imagine after day 1 that this thing is going to be stained.
Oh, yeah. Pretty nasty.
Blood going up and down the steps.
Yeah.
Poor horn, there they are.
Horns.
The horns are what is used to cut the meat to, they splash the blood on it.
Oh,
When it says splash blood, they're not necessarily taking blood and throwing it on it. They're ripping open the blood vessels. Okay. Yeah, that's just,
Did they take them up alive and then impale them, kill them?
they would have killed them
Someplace
right,
else,
but right.
So was to talk
I
about.
mean, they may have killed them there, but they wouldn't have used the horns for that. They would have used the utensils that they had. So, okay.
good.
Okay. So next week, we continue on with the new temple, the priest rolls, and the land on which the temple sits, because there's going to be a division of land again. I've got 44 and 45 written there. I'll look at it and see how long I think the class will take. If so, if it's not too long, we may go into 46. I may divide 46 up, but we'll see. Because after that, then we've got a couple more chapters, and then Ezekiel, we're finally done with Ezekiel. And then we get into Daniel. And then it gets fun. Because there's a lot of eternal throne stuff there. So,
No more bull.
well, no, still a lot of bull. Okay, well, thank y'all very much.
All right, thank you, Mike.
I got to-
Thank you for what all you do.